Image description. Blue, white, and black circles move outwards to display the WDBTAP logo. In a blue circle, a small white hand is in front of a larger black hand. To the right of the image are the words WESP DHH, Wisconsin Deafblind Technical Assistance Project, WDBTAP. Underneath is the Ideas That Work logo written in red with a blue arrow circled around it. Words next to the logo read, "The contents of this presentation were developed under a grant from the U.S. Department of Education, H326 T180044. However, those contents do not necessarily represent the policy of the U.S. Department of Education, and you should not assume endorsement by the federal government." A Zoom screen is shown. On the left is a blue presentation slide with yellow text that reads, "Empowerment Through Touch Haptic Communication. Ryan Odland, Helen Keller National Center, October 14th, 2020, WDBTAP." On the presentation slide is a picture of two women by a lake. One woman is standing behind the other using haptic communication. On the right of the screen are two boxes. One has the interpreter and the other the presenter. Good afternoon. I'm so excited that you are all able to join us today to learn more about haptics. My name is Jen Gettleman, and I'm the deafblind consultant on our WDBTAP and outreach teams. With us today is Ryan Odland. Ryan is the new Assistant Director of Field Services with the Helen Keller National Center for Deafblind Youths and Adults. Previously, he was the regional representative for the North Central region, which serves 6 states, including Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. Ryan previously worked as a vocational rehabilitation counselor with Minnesota State Services for the Blind. Ryan, who is deaf-blind with Usher syndrome subtype 1, holds a bachelor's degree in psychology from Rochester Institute of Technology and a master's degree in special education from Gallaudet University. He has advocated for deaf-blind awareness and program development at local, state, and national levels. At this time, I'm going to turn it on over to Ryan. Ryan, thank you for joining us today.
Great. Thank you, Jen. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Ryan. This is my sign name. This afternoon, we have the opportunity to learn more about haptics and haptic communication and how we can support those families who have children who are deaf-blind with being able to communicate and enhance their environmental information and empower those students to become more independent. This is what we're going to learn more about this afternoon during our presentation. We'll have an overview and opportunity to explain more about this later. So let's go ahead and get started now. Go to the next slide. So today we are going to demonstrate an awareness of why access to environmental and visual information is so vital to individuals who are deafblind and to support them. We will demonstrate an awareness of how individuals who are deafblind can use haptics in various functional situations. We will also demonstrate an awareness of what information can be provided or received via haptics. All right, continue. And fourth, we will demonstrate an awareness of how one can share their personal reactions, like facial expressions and their behaviors, in a one-on-one or small group setting, and being able to communicate with haptics, and how that can affect their decisions, and how they can be more inclusive that way. Next slide, please. Oh yes, there's one more here. Oh, Jen, yeah, we'll explain more information about haptics, sorry. And all right, go ahead. We'll talk about access to the environment and how that is so critical for one to understand what's going on in their environment and how we can support deafblind people to have that information. It can then help them become more aware and informed. Once they have that awareness and information, they can then make informed choices instead of just having comments or choices being given to them. They know what's going on, especially if they have very limited vision or hearing. Let's say they have very limited vision and hearing at the same time. The information that they're getting will affect what decisions they're going to be making. And they want possibly to know specifics. And it's all going to depend on each person's individual situation. But we want to make sure that they know the big picture about what's going on in their environment. We want people to feel confident in their environment. The more they're aware of what's going on in their environment, the more connected they're going to feel in their environment. Fully comprehending the message that's being shared with them. This means that sometimes people may be making comments that can be interpreted different ways. For example, like a joke, or if something happened, the deafblind person may be wondering, why do you have those facial expressions going on? Or why is everybody in the room laughing? They don't have that environmental information. When they do have the environmental information, they can then be a part of the group and they know what's happening and can be involved and know that they're on the same page as everybody else that's in the same environment. It makes them feel more connected and a part of what's going on. Next. Okay, next slide. So there are different methods of communicate for accessing environmental information through communication. So there is sign language, there is spoken language, there is text or written language, and there is touch. Those are 4 different approaches to how you communicate, how you can communicate with somebody. And you can do that with haptics, or you can use multiple kinds of approaches at the same time. It doesn't have to be just one method. You can use multiple methods at the same time. Next slide. Some of the benefits of haptics and using touch to provide information. As I mentioned before and explained before, having that environmental information And knowing what's going on helps the person feel completely connected, and they can be a part of their environment, and they can make informed decisions based on the specific situation and what's happening at that time. That will help them then become more in control of their own lives, and that way they don't feel that they're missing anything or that others are making decisions for them. They'll be a part of groups. So whether it be with their teachers, their parents, they can be leaders, be a part of teams because of these different approaches of communication. So it doesn't matter whether they're in school or work or home environment, they can still make sure that they're getting that information and being a part of that environment and being a part of the communication. It's discreet to know that a deaf person has a person behind them. They have to be very discreet about that. So a deafblind person may get in front and lead more rather than the person who's helping them. Or they're making sure that they're getting the information in the way that they need the information fed to them. And this is all through touch and through back channeling, which we'll talk about later, or through their arms. And I'll explain some of these methods later to the haptics. A person may recognize that a person is deafblind because of that. And they might try to take control of an environment or a situation because that deafblind person is there. And then that can bring that person down to a different, that deaf-blind person down to a different level, where they don't need to be brought down to a different level. They can be on the same level, on the same playing field as everybody else. There can be several misunderstandings when information is not given, and a person may be trying to communicate, but they're interrupted and they may lose their train of thought, or they may not remember what they were talking about because of the interruptions. So this is an approach where they are getting the information, it's constant for them. If there happens to be a situation, let's say, that's not quite so important, but it's still information that needs to be communicated and it's back channeled to them. For example, somebody raising their hand or other environmental information like that, that can be communicated at the same time. Let's say somebody's going on and on and on, and the deafblind person is trying to make a comment, and they're wanting, there's other people in the room that also are trying to, and they have their hand up for a long time. There are times to interrupt, but at the same time, you want to make sure that people are being involved on the same playing field. So these are just some examples of how we can engage and allow deafblind people to be in control of the communication. And we did talk about the level playing field of being in control and feeling at an equal level as the others in the communication. All right, so then reduce misunderstandings. Environmental information helps reduce misunderstandings as well, because it's giving you more information and helps you understand what's happening with that specific situation or communication or conversation that's going on. So all of those things in the environment are all part of the communication, and it really connects the dots. Next slide, please. Looking at the background and the history of how the use of touch has been used in the United States. Haptics itself started in Norway. Over in Europe, and that in area there is a deafblind community. They realized that they had many years, over hundreds of years, they've been using home signs and using tactile communication to send and receive information. In the 1990s, they started to document what was going on, and they started to develop and expand what they were learning. And it started to spread. And other areas were starting to standardize the system of haptics. Some were very flexible, and they matched the environment or the individual to what was going on. But they really wanted something that could be used in a variety of environments, whether it be home or school or work. The Helen Keller National Center, they got a grant and funding under the Helms-Kelsey grant, and that covered the American edition of haptics, and we were able to start bringing what was going on in Europe and bring it to the United States and start teaching people here in the US. So we were starting to get some people who were trained. When it was brought to the United States, it then started to spread throughout the United States, and it has been for at least the past 5 years now. And we've started to notice the benefits of the haptic system. And we will go into more details about this and the benefits for individuals who are deafblind and how they can use haptics at home or in the field of work. In one moment, we're going to switch interpreters.
Oh, next slide, please. We just discussed this. Yeah, we just had that conversation. So this, I wanted to show you a brief video to give you a better understanding of how it's working for individuals, what it looks like. So please take a peek.
Using haptic signals to navigate one's environment. One woman is walking down the hallway with a white cane. A second woman provides the signal for straight ahead on her back. She then provides the signal for door to indicate the 3 doors that they are passing. Using haptics, the provider informs her a person is walking towards them. The receiver immediately moves to the left to avoid colliding with the person.
So it was a very short clip, but it demonstrated how a person is using haptics and allowing environmental information to become accessible when walking down a hallway. So the deafblind individual is walking first, with directions being provided to them on their back, guiding them along successfully and safely. So again, this is demonstrating how you can use the haptic system for guiding an individual using symbols as opposed to leading with an arm or more physically demanding touch. So this is just helping the person become more aware of their space and become more familiar with the environment and who's coming and going within that environment. So those individuals are working together to pass along the information to move along successfully. Okay, so haptics It's not an official language. It is not a language. It is only there to assist in providing information to a person who is deafblind with the knowledge of their environment. It doesn't mean that it is a replacement or substitution for any other form of communication. By no means is that the intent. But this, with another means of communication, would help to expand the information that that person is receiving within their given environment. It can talk about specific details. So again, it's working in tandem with other means of communication for additional information to help the communication become more accessible and effective. To help illustrate my point, if you're talking with somebody, let's say we have 4 people in a room all conversing, and one of the individuals in the circle happens to laugh because they spilled their cup of water. If the deaf-blind person rather, doesn't have that information, it can be alarming to them if they get splashed or they don't understand what the other reactions are happening or why that's going on. So that communication may be given to them on their back through haptics can help them to know in that real time what's going on, and they can react accordingly as well. You know, or maybe the coffee's all out. That's not good. We always want to make sure we have something, and also something for to spill that you can help clean up, etc. So haptics has a variety of symbols, actually more than 100 symbols that are utilized. We do have a published book of 103 different signals that are used, and there's always being more that are added for home, school, and the like. Depending on that specialized environment, the individuals can create some themselves. We do provide detailed orders because that is very important that they are provided within a specific order for this system to be effective. It is not done in a random fashion, but in a specific order to help the individual understand and make it clear. Because we do have some signals that are used for multiple different meanings. So depending on how you present it to the deafblind person, it could be food, drink, or something else. So there is a set structure, again, just to help, and research has shown as well, within several areas on the body, you can utilize your arm, your back of your hand, your foot even, your upper leg, to show, like your thigh, all those different, you can use those areas of your body for haptic communication. Some people feel that certain areas are more effective than others, but there are those 5 areas that have, through research, been proven most effective. But it is individual specific, and things are constantly evolving, and again, dependent on the individual. So, next slide, please. So the haptic structure. There are various things that are included, such as the places of articulation, like I just alluded to, on your back, on your upper arm, your hand, and your foot, or your upper leg, like your thigh, above the knee. Hand shape has various meanings. Your open 5 hand shape would be this. All your fingers are separated and straight. Closed hand. 3 hand shape. 2 and a 1. You can all utilize to help provide information, or like a claw. A fist, that's used as well. So there are various hand shapes that are used for various symbols. Our last point here is in reference to pressure and contact. Helps to demonstrate the tone or comfort, the intensity, the movement, and helps to illustrate person's facial expressions. If someone's upset, how upset are they? It depends on the intensity of the touch. If they're just starting to get irritated, or if their blood is just boiling. So you can show that all those fluctuations with haptics, and that has to do with pressure and your touch. That's very comparable to English. When a person says, I ran with a very strong voice. Could be something happened when I ran, versus like, I ran through the forest. It sounds like, okay, it was more of a pleasurable run. I ran through the forest. There's something else. Maybe something was chasing you. That's just an example of how tone is reflected within the haptic touch signaling. Next slide. And these are different symbols that you can use, or different pieces of information that can be provided or received through haptics. Name signals for each individual within the environment. That can be important for the reason that maybe I am sitting within a room that has a lecture style, or even maybe in a circle fashion, and having a discussion, socially chatting, maybe even at a restaurant as an example. And I've been waiting for my friend to arrive, and he's late. Maybe he got stuck in traffic or just got busy with something. Who knows? So I'm sitting there waiting and chatting with some other individuals. And it's really developed into a good conversation. Once my friend arrives and interrupts, he may just come over, and as opposed to interrupting, and just gently signal on my upper arm his name sign. So I know he has arrived, and once our conversation's done, I'll greet him accordingly, and we can all join in the conversation together, as opposed to being disjointed and losing my story or within the conversation. It's just more fluid, just as a way to introduce someone as they've arrived or as maybe leaving. If they can help with directions, it doesn't mean moving, but it means in terms of where that person's supposed to look and try and find something. Like if you have a cardinal in your environment and it's up in the tree and you want the blind person to look for it, you can help to show them where they are. Or maybe a small child has some vision, and maybe it's a tunnel vision, so they can look at things instead of grabbing their head and moving it around obnoxiously. You can use this direction signal to help guide them to where they're supposed to be looking. Amount, size, intensity. We can talk about that a little bit later in terms of how you would show that on your upper arm. So with your elbow, it would mean something was empty, or your amount is, there's nothing there. So the higher up you get to your shoulder, the more of something that you have, the fuller it is. For example, if you have a glass of a beverage, if you have your hand signals all the way up to your shoulder, it means your glass is full. If it's halfway down your arm, it's empty. So if a waiter comes and says, like, would you like a drink, and they accidentally overfill your cup, the person can signal that it's overflowing, so you're aware. Okay, facial expressions, actions, various movements, where people are looking. If people are yawning and you know that they're falling asleep on you, that can be communicated through haptics. The layout of a room, how things are set up in your environment, is really important. A very important function of haptics. We utilize that heavily. Food and drink items, personal reactions, really like colors, a description of a person, what they look like. There's so much, much more. Next slide. So these are just various examples of situations when a person can use haptics. One-on-one, interacting with somebody, getting to know their reactions, facial expressions, if someone's shocked or in awe, or maybe upset and crying, laughing, just that back channeling, and being to connect more with the story and those that you're sharing it with. I would like to be aware of the influence my story or conversation is having on a person. If I'm boring them, I want to know that I'm boring to that individual. It's only fair that instead of us just continuing to go on about something, because it's a guessing game at times how engaging that can be if I don't have that environmental information provided. Educational settings, school, it can be within a classroom or team discussion, group work, presentations, the teacher within the classroom when the kids are playing, social settings. You're just hanging out, having a conversation, knowing what's going on within the environment. Within your own family, sitting at the dinner table, and just, again, partaking fully, being fully inclusive at work, during meetings. So, okay, we can move on. I'm switching interpreters.
The roles and responsibilities of the team is very different, and I like to look at those roles. First, you have the receiver. That is the person who is getting the tactile or haptic information, the person who is being touched and getting the information given to them. Then you have your provider. That is the person who is feeding the information to the receiver, letting them know what's in the environment and what they see or what's going on. The priority of the provider is to give the information to the receiver, and that's as much information as they can. They want to give information like texture or color or shape of something. If there's big animal with large bones, and they want to make sure that the receiver is exposed to that information. If you're in a work meeting, let's say, they may want to know if people are paying attention, if somebody has raised their hand to speak, if there's side conversations going on. Somebody's on their phone texting. Let's say somebody leaves the room and comes back. That's all environmental information. I don't care personally about what people are wearing, what their clothes look like. I'm sure there are some people that are like that, but you're going to assume people are dressed properly, they look nice, or let's say it's Halloween and people are dressed up. if you're at a extravagant ball or something like that, or for a Halloween party, if somebody's a vampire or a puppy or Dracula or a pumpkin, whatever it is, those fun things are information that you can be provided or providing through haptics. And there's different levels of that information you can provide as well. So prioritizing the information is very important. You want to make sure that the provider and the receiver communicate ahead of time what the receiver wants to know. What kind of environmental information do they want? That way the provider can make the appropriate decisions into what to give as far as information to the receiver. Next slide. I think there's one more. There we go. Yes. Okay. Now we're going to go into a little more detail about the haptic system and the actual structure of it and foundation. We use what's called signal references, or reference signals, excuse me. And they identify what kind of signal is being used. So for example, that will then identify what the description is then going to be in the environment and the information. There's 9 different areas of reference signals. So there's food, there's drink, letters, numbers, a person, animals, emotions, the room, and colors. I can show you some of the different signals for all of these to give you a better understanding of how these relate to how they can be used. Next slide. These are examples of reference signals. You can see the different pictures on this page and what they each stand for. So a person is down the arm with what would look like a C hand shape, but you're just using your pointer finger and thumb, and you pull that down the arm. That references a person. If you're talking about a room, that can be done on the back, and the room can be drawn on the back. So you're going to put a square on the back to reference the room. Then you can give information and possibly draw the design of the room, like a map almost, of the room on that person's back so they can have a better understanding of what it looks like. For food, it goes around the hand like this, or it goes around the arm like this. It's kind of like if you think of the motion of chewing. It goes around on the upper arm like this. Those are just 3 examples of reference signals. Go to the next slide, please. These are some directional signals. If you want to go to the left, if you want to go straight, or you want to go to the right, on the person's back, you will give that direction, whether it be left or straight is up the back, and right is off to the right shoulder. Again, you can use the back or use the upper shoulder area even if you're walking beside the person. So you could, instead of the person walking behind the provider but walking behind, they can be walking beside the receiver, and they can use just that upper left shoulder to provide the information of left, straight, or right. that information can then guide the receiver down where they're walking. Obviously, it's important to understand that many things don't have to mean just walk. It can be that you're at a food table and you have your plate in front of you and your cup off to the left. So you have, let's say, some soup and your cup and other your utensils and things like that. The provider can let them know the cup is on the left so that the receiver doesn't have to reach around and try to understand where that stuff is. The provider can help them and guide them in the process. They can, as the receiver is putting their hand out, the provider can say, go to the left more, go to the left more, and then they can find their drink that way. So it's information that they can do in real time as well. Again, it's very important for that provider and that receiver to have a good, positive relationship and understanding of how they're going to communicate with each other. I'm trying to think of other situations. Let's say maybe a kid has a radio in the car, a remote control radio car, let's say, and the car goes off into a ditch or something, but they didn't see it. Mom and dad could go with them and they could direct them or help them direct that remote control car, and it's exciting for them. So mom or dad who is doing haptics for that child could then allow that child to enjoy that toy and be able to control it. Those are just some examples of how you can use the directional signals. Next slide, please. These are other examples of directional information. Let's say you're in the bathroom and you're done using the bathroom, but you need to then find the sink, and because you want to, of course, wash your hands. You don't want to be touching everything with your hands that are dirty. The provider can come behind the person and give them directions on how to get to the sink, to where they can wash their hands, and let them know where the soap is. And then they can start providing tactile information after that once their hands are clean. That's one example. If somebody decides to take a picture, let's say, for example, a family is lining up and everybody's smiling, but the deafblind person is looking in the wrong direction, they can let them know that they need to move their head and look towards the camera as opposed to a different direction so that they're looking in the same way that everybody else is. Well, everybody wants a good looking picture, of course. When you go to a buffet, this can let the person know where the spoon is in order to put the food onto their plate. These are directional signals that can help the person find where the spoon is, where the foods are, that kind of information. When talking about eye gaze, again, you want to make sure that the person is always looking at somebody else who's speaking to them. Or if they're trying to find an object, let's say a waiter has just brought a glass of wine to the table, for example. Of course, you don't want that wine to be spilled. I would not recommend these kinds of things with kids, of course, just teasing. But these are just examples that you can understand how haptics can be used and directional signals. And we've talked about some other information as well, as even just the water glass or things like that. I think that's a better example maybe for kids. Next slide, please. The use of directional signals do not replace guiding tools. If they have a guide dog, let them use their guide dog. This is just a supportive tool that they can use with the other main tools that they use in their life. have to make sure that all the information is being given to them and giving them the beneficial information. And part of the environment information that you're giving to them is for safety. Next slide. Another signal that can be used is leveling signals. This could be also for intensity. And this is a very important signal to use. If something's going down, you can let them know something's going down on the arm. If something's going up, this could also mean a head being raised or lowered for eye gaze. If we're walking and there's going to be a steep hill coming up, or a steep grade or stairs, can let the person know how that looks. Another situation showing leveling, as you see in the picture here, again, we want to use the top of the shoulder for the top of something, or meaning something is full, you would want to tap the top of the shoulder. Or if something's extremely large, you can do that as well, depending on the object that you're explaining for the person. Again, it's if they have that large tap on the top of the shoulder, they know it's a large amount or a very large item, or that something's extremely full. As you're coming down the arm, you can let them know how much less of an item there is. Let's say it's only half a glass, or there's some inside a glass, or there's just a little bit, or there's nothing left. You would go further down the arm. Now, if you're talking about height for somebody, you're going to start at the bottom and work your way up the arm to let them know, or the height of something. So if something is short or something is taller, and as it gets taller, you're going to move up the arm to show the height of something. One example of a situation might be stairs. Let's say you're being the provider for somebody and there are stairs coming up. You can let them know it's a short stairway, or as they're going down, you can let them know how the level is, how close they're getting to the bottom of the stairs. The bottom of the stairs would be the elbow. Let's say there's a loading dock. You don't want somebody to fall off of a loading dock. You can let them know, some of those loading docks are 5 feet down. So you can give them that information that there's a large drop rather than stairs. Again, this is environmental information that they can then understand and make a determination then. So this can be used for steps, let's say light steps, steeper steps, all that kind of information can be provided for the receiver, the deafblind person. That way they can register and know what's in their environment. It may be that they're in an environment they've never experienced before. If that happens, they may stop and ask the provider for clarification. Once that provider identifies the clarification, then they may feel more comfortable going to that area in the future. Those are things they may remember, or they may not remember, and they might need that information again. So it's all about how communication is set up. Next slide. As we talked about, you could do high or low. You can talk about children or adults with levels and grading. Empty and full, cold or hot, as far as temperature, and more or less. Again, the bottom would be less, the top would be more. The taller somebody is would be more, the hotter something is would be more. Next slide, please. When describing a room, some things to remember. For example, let's say we have a room, so we start at the bottom and we work up to the top. We draw the room, and then we want to explain what the room looks like. We want to help identify placement within that room for the receiver, where the chairs are, where the tables are, where there may be objects in the room for them. Especially if they're going into a new environment. I don't want to trip over something. I don't want to fall over a chair or a yoga ball or anything like that. If the chairs are set up in circles or in groups, how many chairs are there? How are they set up within the room? Maybe it's a social or a birthday party and you want to work your way around the room. The deafblind person may want to know that there's kids coming in and out of the room because those can be tripped over, or they may prefer just to sit out in the corner, or they may want to know if there's food ready. Where's the food? Where's the pizza? How can I get to it? I'm hungry. They may need to know where that stuff is in the room. And so you can describe that information using the map. Let's say a person needs to know where the bathroom is. You can explain to them how to get to the bathroom or where the drinks are. Again, it's important. That's why it's important to describe rooms, doors, placement of items, and explain where things are for them so that they can have that information and they are empowered then to know what they need to do, where they need to go. They have that information ahead of time and they know where things are. We're going to switch interpreters.
Okay, facial expressions. Crying. Someone's tearing up. Smiling. Maybe they have wide eyes. All indicate someone's facial expressions and possible moods. Next slide. This is another example through video to help you get a better understanding.
Social feedback. Deafblind colleagues using haptics. Video image description. Two women seated facing each other with their legs interlocked. They are communicating via American Sign Language. The woman on the left, Marikar, uses tactile sign language. She is not able to access sign or facial expressions visually. The woman on the right, Sonia, has restricted visual fields and decreased acuities, but is able to visually access sign if presented within her field of vision. In this first clip, you'll notice Sonia and Marikar are having a conversation. They are tapping each other on the leg to indicate they are following along. Sonia signing. What did you do this weekend? Marikar signing. Oh, that's right. I was on vacation last week with my husband. We went to visit my family in Canada. Sonia is tapping Marikar's leg to indicate she's following along. And then we left to return home on Saturday. We left my parents' house Saturday early, like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And Don drove all the way back to New York. It took us about 11 hours. So by the time I got back to New York, I was pretty pooped and just rested up. In this next clip, Sonia is using the constant contact technique. Marikar signing. You know, I was so mad this morning. Sonia's tapping Marikar's upper arm to indicate she's following along. I was in this big rush, and I ran into my office with my guide dog Dixie. I didn't realize it, but my husband had left my sandwich from Subway on the table. Anyway, I left Dixie in the office, ran out to do a few things, and by the time I got back, my sandwich was gone. I'm looking around for the sandwich, and then I noticed that there was lettuce all over the floor. Sonia's laughing and using the signal for laugh on Marikar's leg. Marikar signing. So obviously Dixie ate the sandwich. I just lost it. Sonia signing. I knew something was up. After lunch, I was out in the hallway, and a student called me over. And Dixie all of a sudden was right by my side, asking me to pet her. She just wasn't acting herself, all innocent. Marikar uses the signal for smile on Sonia's leg. Sonia signing. I was just about to let you know something was up, but then I noticed the big mess all over the kitchen, and I thought, maybe I should stay out of this. She followed me back to my desk and wouldn't leave my side. Obviously, she was hiding from you. No wonder. Marikar's using the signal for laugh. Sonia signing. Did you clean it all up? Marikar signing. Yep, I cleaned it all up, all taken care of. Sonia signing. She ate the whole thing? Was she sick? Marikar's agreeing by tapping on Sonia's knee. Marikar signing. Nope, she was fine. Sonia signing. Ooh, she's lucky. Tapping was used again to indicate they were following the conversation. A few signals were also used to share that they were laughing, agreeing, disagreeing, and smiling.
Okay. So again, that video showed a conversation between two women and how they were able to include facial expressions, back channeling information to help connect with one another and help the story proceed more naturally. Have that emotion become more present and more lively. So the emotion was able to be incorporated through the use of haptics. That's just, again, one example of how inclusive conversations can be when allowing that environmental information to be shared. So that's just, again, to give you a general idea of how to do it, how it augments the communication for deafblind individuals. Next slide, please. It's really important to remain objective when you're being a provider of haptics, not to add any additional information that is not there or relevant. It's just what is in the environment. Errors are, of course, made, but we don't want someone to make assumptions and then pass those assumptions on, because that leads to grave misunderstandings. If the provider shares some information, let the receiver make the decision of how they want to interpret that information. It helps them to learn, grow, and become more aware and cognizant and conscious about their own environment. And it's more stimulating for them, more engaging, and allows them to make more complex decisions and really evaluate their options, from what might have been simple to now really much more involved for various reasons. So that will really help to lead the receiver to interpret the information and come to their own conclusion more successfully, and really become more of a team player for their school environment, for work, and the community, what have you. So that's why this system really, truly is very beneficial to help build that bridge for a deafblind person. You can allow the receiver to interpret information in the environment, such as one person is closing their eyes. You don't want to indicate that that person is bored or fatigued, but allow them to come to their own conclusion of that. Because who knows really why that person is closing their eyes. All you see as a provider is that their eyes are closing. So again, not to jump to conclusions or assumptions, but allow the receiver to figure out the situation for themselves. Another example would be coughing. Were they sick or were they choking? Describing actions. What's happening within the environment? People walking around, things are moving, what kind of facial expressions, eyes rolling, people gazing back and forth. Environmental modifications, what's going on? Really important information to help individuals become aware of their surroundings. In my previous presentations, when I provided it live in person, I'd be standing, on a stage or on a podium in front of an audience, in front of maybe 100 people. I, as a presenter, want to know if anyone is laughing and enjoying my presentation. Or alternatively, if anyone is raising their hand wanting to ask a question. I want to be aware if people are writing things down, taking notes, and they're paying attention, or the crowd has been distracted through something else that I'm unaware of. All that information is very helpful to me as a presenter, so I can alter my presentation and become more involved within the environment. People are entering or leaving. That's all critical to me as an individual to partake in the entire situation. And then it allows me to maintain control as well, to figure out what's going on, maintain that collaboration or that group rapport. And it helps to grow one's self-esteem and confidence with their own ability to partake in those situations. For children in school, it's really important. We want to develop their confidence and their independent skills. Public speaking is not easy, but this is something that can help to develop their public speaking skills, to help them feel like they can partake just as any of their other peers. Next slide, please. Laughing, talking, raising your hand, and signing are all action signals. You could do it on a person's back, and a little circular motion like this is indicating someone is signing within the environment. Moving it kind of straight up and down would be someone's raising their hand. Laughing is a movement like this on someone's back. And the indication of someone talking would be like this. If there's two people talking back and forth, you have two hands going. Next slide. Okay, please show the movie. This is
Using
just an
action
example of a meeting using action signals. Go ahead, thank you.
signals to facilitate a meeting. Chris is seated at a table with several coworkers. He is accessing sign visually, but relies on haptics for information outside of his field of vision. A provider is giving Chris the following information via haptics. People are looking at you using the signal eye gaze. Person is nodding. A person with the initial M has walked into the room. She and another person are walking across the room. Both people sit down. Chris waits until both are situated until continuing on with the meeting. Someone is laughing seated to Chris's right. A person is writing. A person with the initial V seated to Chris's right has raised her hand. A person seated to his left raises her hand and starts signing. Chris looks towards the signer. Chris is taking notes. A person seated to his right is talking and to his left is signing at the same time. The person continues to sign. A person nods in agreement. Chris is informed that the door has opened and a person with the initial M has walked into the room. He's informed that a person to his right is drinking. Chris looks in that direction and nods. The signal for interpreter switch is provided. Chris pauses the meeting and announces it's time to change interpreters.
I just show that video to give you a better understanding of how it's used in terms of the action signals for meetings. If you notice that information was provided to the receiver on various levels of their individual's back, according to where that action was happening within the room and how that room was set up. So the person that was sitting over in the left corner versus the person sitting over on the right-hand side was all appropriately marked on that person's back. Again, to help give spatial awareness to that receiver and where that action was taking place. And then that person can then respond accordingly to where that information is happening, and then they can make a map of the room to just help visualize and guide the next action. So one example is that when I start a meeting, I will commonly ask for information of who is sitting around me. You know, maybe it's in the classroom and how those desks are positioned, and then who's sitting at each desk. That way I'm aware of who's here and who's not. I'll also get their initials, other people, AB, RO, so on and so forth. So I have to keep that in mind. I have to kind of, it's a good memory exercise for myself to have that for the duration of our class. So that's how I use haptics in a situation like that. Next slide, please. Sharing personal reactions. Social feedback, such as nodding your head, laughing, just smiling, allows feedback to better reinforce that conversation and the actions taking place. And a person's language, facial expressions, tone, that information is all tied together and a part of someone's ability to interpret their environment and communication. Next slide. Favorite signals used. Name signs or signals. Interpreter switch. Oftentimes, interpreters do switch out. So that's important to know, and that's done like this. We'll draw a little circle on wherever the reference is taking place on your body. Someone's leaving the room or entering the room. Just draw quickly on that area, saying in or out. And then you can also develop your own to meet the needs of and preferences of your environment or your situation that you find yourself within. Next slide, please. Learning more information about haptics. I do have several opportunities that you can take advantage of, one being a book. You can get a hard copy and just peruse it at your leisure. Really, everything A to Z is explained in there, how to use haptics, how to apply it. Also, we have online trainings that you can watch, various videos for further information and education that can be found at Helen Keller National Center's website. We also have Kindle editions of electronic books. Amazon has that, or Apple iBook. So there are several different options to expand your knowledge and familiarity with this, and how you can utilize this with deafblind youth, students, etc. If you need more questions, please feel free to reach out to me via email. It's tld@hknc.org. And that's how you can contact the Helen Keller National Center. I'm going to switch interpreters.
All right, so that is the presentation. We have a few minutes left now. We could take time for questions. Jen, do you want to read those?
Yes, I was just trying to move things around. So Courtney has a question. It says, how young can an individual be to start learning haptics? Are there any prerequisites for learning haptics for young children, particularly those with congenital deaf blindness? When engaging in one-on-one conversations with a young learner, how do you indicate to the receiver that their communication partner is sighted, hearing, deaf, or deafblind?
This system can be used with anybody. It doesn't matter who they are or what their level of vision loss or hearing loss is. You can still use it and it'll be beneficial for all. Sometimes in the beginning, it might be confusing for them. They may not understand what's going on. They may need more clarification or more identification of who's saying what. For the deafblind person, they can use signals for describing specific information or specifics about the environment. And they can be very basic signals. They don't, just enough for that person to understand. As far as identifying whether the person themselves as the signaler is deaf, blind, hard of hearing, I don't think there's any specifics on that. But if the person hears a high or low tone, you can use the arm signal to let them know. If somebody's speaking very loudly, you could use it up on the upper arm, or a loud noise happens. Or if there's a quieter noise, it would be lower on the arm. That's kind of information you want to help them to be able to communicate. I hope that helps.
And Courtney said, yes, thank you. That was very helpful.
Great. Are there any other questions anybody has? The one comment I'd like to say, giving the learner more opportunities by using haptics, it's such a benefit for people who are deafblind. It really does provide enhancement for their lives because they know what's going on in their environment. It makes them feel connected and doesn't make them feel as isolated. They feel a part of the community, and they can be creative with their play, with trying to match the individual and the environment. When using it in a classroom, enjoy what you're doing. Using it at home, you can use it various ways. You can start as young as you'd like. You can start with a baby and start very, very basic haptics. And of course, as they develop and get older, you can increase the use of haptics as well. And it can become a communication skill that will benefit their lives.
Ryan, there is another question. Jen is wondering, are there certain signals you recommend starting to use with very young children?
This is Ryan speaking. I would suggest starting with name signals, with room layout, very basic room layout as far as where tables and chairs are, actions and facial expressions, and then you can add from there later on. I think directions are a little more complicated, and that can be something at a different level. I think it's best to start with actions and social feedback. I think those are the most important features of communication to start with.
Jody asks, if users create signals for specific situations, so for example, at home and family specific, how can they be used in other situations? Or should those newly created signals only be used within that setting with the family and not transferred to other situations or people?
Yes, you can definitely bring those signals to other locations, for sure. You could do that. It's the same with language. There's regional signs and accents and different words that are used in different parts of the country. But you bring with you your signals, what you have. And especially if you're teaching deaf-blind children, they may have preferred signals that they understand or use, and then they can tell others what they prefer, and that empowers them to enhance their communication. And it's a skill that they can use to then develop their communication and how they can bring those to different environments and locations. I think often we ask people, what signals do you want to use for this? And it's best for them to tell you what their preferred signals are, and then the signaler will use that. I think that's the best way that communication can happen, is if you are carrying those over.
Jody said thank you. And Courtney was wondering, so when you're teaching these, how are they engaging to understand?
So remember that haptics is not a one-way street. It's going both ways. There's other modes of communication that are going on with haptics. You're signing, you're speaking, whatever you're using. And this is providing you your environmental information. you can play with it. You can have fun with it. You can play guessing games. You can blindfold somebody. You can play different games and practice what you're doing and really use that tactile to it. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's going to take time. When people begin learning to use haptics, it's very awkward. They're very unfamiliar with how to do it, but they're going to pick it up fast because tactile is a part of their world. So I say, bring those actions, use it in games, use it in fun, in play, in social life, and it's going to really click for them quickly.
Courtney said, beautifully signed.
Any others? You can always contact me at any time if something comes up. You think of something later on, that's perfectly fine. You can contact me.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ryan, for sharing all of this information around haptics. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure others did as well. Thank you, everyone else, for joining us. In just a minute, am going to put a survey in the chat. If you could just take a few minutes to fill that out for us, it really does help us plan ways to support you, your child, and the educational team. And so we would really appreciate if you could just take a couple minutes and fill it out. And I'll put that there now. And then once you have that, just know you can always contact myself or anyone else at WDBTAP if you have questions or need Ryan's contact information. We would be glad to share that. So thank you again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.